We're giving you our picks for the Sugar Bowl today. We've got Texas, Washington. This line is set to Washington +4. The odds are at +100 on BroThrow. So if you want to sign up to make any bet from any state in the U.S. for free without paying a VIG, just click the link in the description box below. It's brothrow.com/YouTube. You can take totals, better odds on the money line than any other site you'll find online. And that's where Jake and I make all of our plays. But Jake, it's been a great bowl season. We just got done talking about Michigan and Alabama. I'm excited for that one, but I'm more excited for this one because I think this has potential to be more of an offensive explosion. And you'll see that in the total. The total set 19 points higher here. Are you surprised this is a 63-point total, or were you expecting this with explosive quarterbacks?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I think this number is honestly a little bit low. I mean, you got Michael Penix Jr. on one hand for the University of Washington, who leads the country in pass yards per game. They have absolutely an explosive offense. Roma Duns, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, all on the outside. They have probably the best receiving trio in the country.
Would you
the tight end solid, and the running back Dylan Johnson also really solid.
But it all pause right there. I want to go back there. When you say that they're one of the best receiving corps in the country, where do you think that stacks up with Texas? Because I know they're getting a lot of love, but does Texas they have Xavier Worthy, who's obviously a threat. They have Adonai Mitchell. Do they have the depth that Washington has, or do you think Washington just goes deeper, and because of that, you would call them the best in the country?
I personally think Washington guys are a little bit more talented than Texas's guys. I think that they can just do a lot more. I think that the play calling is a lot more innovative from DeBoer than Sarkisian. Not that that's really an indictment on the talents of the receivers, but I just think that Washington's guys are stronger overall. I mean, look at the draft, for instance. I think Adunze is going to end up being a top 10 pick, and I don't think anyone on Texas is going to go that highly. However, we could see Texas have an offensive explosion even better than Washington's because Washington has a bottom 12 pass defense in the entire country. It's kind of the dichotomy with them. That's why so many of their games are so high scoring and the overs are so high, because they can light it up on offense. But as a result, they give up a ton of yards on defense because the offense gets off the field so quickly. The other reason why Washington is such a successful offense is because of their offensive line. In my opinion, they have the best offensive line in the entire country. They're number 2 in the country in sacks allowed percentage. The only team above them is Oregon because Bo Nix throws the ball in 0.5 seconds every single time with his slants and screens. Michael Penix Jr., he's not doing that with his bombs down the field every other play. So I think that's an even more impressive sign for Washington that they've given up so few sacks. And Penix himself, because he experienced so many injuries at Indiana behind their horrible offensive line, he knows that he has to get rid of the ball and avoid hits at all costs. And that's a very key trait to have as a quarterback, especially in a big-time game like this. In a game like this where both teams can score on virtually every possession, turnovers are just killer.
Last year, Penix was 32 of 54 for 287 yards. I think he threw 1 interception. Ewers was 31 of 47 for 369 yards. It was a pass-heavy game, but the score did not indicate that because you know what the final score was? 27-20. It went drastically lower than what this total is. And it wasn't because there were a ton of turnovers. There was only 1 turnover the entire game. But I think Washington ran the ball really well. It burned a lot of clock. Texas didn't run the ball at all. And I'm just wondering, are we going to get the similar style of play? Or are we going to see a lot more success in the passing game that actually turns to points?
I mean, you look at last year's bowl game, I think again, as we talked about in previous videos, tough to necessarily view that as an indictment on this year's bowl game because of the lack of talent that's playing. Texas had like Bijan Robinson sit out for that game, and he was obviously the focal point of their offense. But as you said, Washington beat Texas last year in the Alamo Bowl. They're up 27-10, so it was kind of a blowout from that perspective. Early, Texas kind of clawed back in garbage time. But I think this year's going to be closer. I think this Texas team is a lot better. Ewers is another year older. They got Adonai Mitchell from University of Georgia as a transfer. Their other receivers are a year better. Yes, they don't have Bijan Robinson. They don't have Roshan Johnson, but they still have an incredibly strong offense.
And what do you think about Texas from a being tested standpoint? We know Washington ran a gauntlet. They were at USC, at Arizona. Those are 2 teams who won convincingly in their bowl games. At Oregon State. They played Oregon twice, and they faced Cam Ward, who's been, I think, the hottest name in the transfer portal. He's a quarterback who's going to play at Ohio State, USC, or Miami next year. So they've got a really good resume. Then Texas played Bama. That win looks amazing. But Oklahoma, Kansas State, Oklahoma State aren't anything special. Who's more battle tested along the way?
Yeah, as you said, Washington definitely ran the gauntlet in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 was the strongest division in college football this year, and they went undefeated. Texas obviously had a great season beating Alabama. But in the Big 12 play itself, Oklahoma was probably the second most talented team, and they lost to them. I don't believe that they had any really trademark victories because there were no other trademark teams in the Big 12, in my opinion. Oklahoma State was decent. Kansas State was decent, but they weren't really a standout team. Alabama is by far the signature win on their schedule, but that was so early in the season. Bama's a completely different team. That's the kind of the argument about what will happen now. Like Bama is a theoretical favorite right now on the sports books. If you look at the, you can bet on predicting what the future line is going to be. So if you think Texas is going to beat them in a rematch, you can get plus points right now. But Washington's getting plus points in this rematch where they won last year. I just disagree with this entirely. Washington has been one of the best teams in the entire country this season. Texas, while they've been good, have not been super impressive to me. They had to go for blowouts in their last 2 weeks just to get in because they were nervous that their resume wasn't going to be good enough, even with this win over Alabama. I don't think they're going to be able to get that over Washington. And Washington, even though they won last year, and you might say it's tough to win back-to-back, they've already done that against Oregon this year. So, Penix is my guy. I think their offense is so good. I'm going to be on Washington +4 and money line.
I'm going to guess the hot pick right now is to take Washington with the points, because why wouldn't it be? They've already proven time and time again they can win as a dog. So from that perspective, it makes me nervous. But I've overthought plays like this all bowl season, and it cost me. I thought about USC getting 7, and I was like, oh, well, that's a clear sign they're going to get killed by Louisville. And then I took the L. And then I thought the same thing with Duke against Troy, because Duke was getting 7 against Troy, and then I faded them, and I took the L again. So I feel like the book's begging me to take that 4, but I don't think I'm going to make the mistake I did in the past. I think I'm going to continue to ride Washington. During the season, I think I was probably on them 70% of the time, faded them a few times. I know specifically it was against Oregon at the end there, and then against Oregon State a couple weeks before that. But in general, I've liked them this year. I really like Penix. And yeah, I think that 4 is probably the right play. And I'm going to sprinkle the money line too, because any of these teams can win in the playoff matchups. I don't think there's anyone who's outclassing the other. I think this is going to be a pretty tight playoff season.
Now, moving back to the total on this game, I'm actually leaning towards the under. I know that everyone likes to bet the over when you have 2 high-profile, prolific offenses, especially with quarterbacks like Penix and Ewers, who are both going to be first-round picks in the NFL draft coming up. Both these teams have really good offensive lines, and they're going to want to establish the run, Washington especially. I watched a lot of their games over the last few weeks and months, and they've been running the ball a lot more than I thought they would because they have a really strong offensive line and a good running back. This way they can limit the hits on Penix and really, set up those play action passes and get some big bombs here. So I think there's going to be a little bit more clock control in this game because both teams are going to want to keep the other team's offense on the sideline. That's the best way to prevent Penix from scoring on you and prevent the viewers from scoring on you, is to have them on the sideline and not have the ball in their hands. So I'm going to lean towards the under here and take Washington +4 in the money line. Those are my picks for this game.
Yeah, I think the under makes sense, especially looking back to last year. Like you said, they like to run the ball. Last year, I think they ran it for 180 yards on Texas. And that's what really chewed up that clock in that game. And that's what pushed it to the end like that, so that Texas wasn't able to catch back up, because that was Texas's goal. They were down by 17 at some point. They had to fight back as much as they could. And they were only able to get 10 points on the board because they just ran out of time. I like that play. I think Washington's going to be an exciting one. If they can get to the playoff, I would love to see them in the national championship, because I don't think they've been in the national championship in my lifetime, or maybe it was when I was really young and I just don't remember. But Jake, I'm excited for these games. Can't wait to watch them on January 1st, and I will see you in the next one.